you. Joining us now, Director of the National Economic Council, Brian Deese. Brian, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Thanks for having me, Brett.
You know, inflation is at a 31-year high. So how can you say that this Build Back Better bill, which, as you just saw, passed the House on Friday, is not going to hurt in that way? How can you say it's going to lower inflation when you're pumping really trillions of dollars into the economy in just recent months?
Well, there's no question inflation is high, and it's affecting American consumers, and it's affecting their outlook. But that's actually why we need to move on this Build Back Better bill right now. Experts across the board have looked at it and have concluded that it won't increase inflation because it's paid for. When you pay for investments, you don't actually add aggregate demand to the economy. We saw this week two large rating firms, financial rating firms, Fitch and Moody's, actually underscore that this bill won't increase inflation. But what it will do is it will lower costs. Brett, this bill is going to be the biggest cost-cutting bill for working class and American families in decades in this country. And it's going to go at costs that are persistent problems for the American people in their lives. We'll lower the cost of prescription drugs, put a cap on out-of-pocket costs for drugs for seniors, and allow Medicare to finally negotiate prescription drug prices on behalf of American consumers. It will lower the cost of health care, lower the cost of housing as well, and it will get millions of Americans to work by actually addressing the costs that keep them from going to the workplace. We have millions of parents, women in particular, who can't work because they can't afford the cost of child care or to care for an elderly parent. This bill will lower those costs, get people working, and because it's paid for and it won't increase the deficit, we're actually going to do that in a way that keeps the strong momentum in the economy going.
Yeah, I mean, you know that there are critics who really have issue with the paid-for part of it. We've heard former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, who also held the job you now hold with the Obama administration, express real concerns about Democrats not taking inflation seriously and only exacerbating the problem with these bills. But now you have Steve Ratner, senior advisor in the Obama administration, writing this: Build Back Better can be deemed paid for only if one embraces budget gimmicks, like assuming that some of the most important initiatives will be allowed to expire in just a few years. The result, a package that front-loads spending while tax revenues arrive only over a decade. The Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget estimates that the plan would likely add $800 billion or more to the deficit over the next 5 years, exacerbating inflationary pressures. So you're saying Ratner and Summers are both wrong?
Well, respectfully, Larry Summers, who has been a critic of a number of the policies of this administration, has actually said that the Build Back Better bill won't increase inflation and makes much-needed investments in the economy. And it has been a while in Washington since we've actually done the hard work of paying for a bill over 10 years. But that's exactly what this bill does. It has long-term investments in things like child care, lowering the cost of child care, providing preschool across the country. But then it pays for those by doing long-term reforms to our tax system. For example, we would put a 15% minimum tax for the largest corporations to avoid what happens today, which is that large, very profitable companies end up paying zero in taxes. That's a permanent reform to the tax system that will generate more revenue for the long term. And so when you look at the impact of those policies in the aggregate, it would reduce the deficit by about $112 billion this decade. Actually, over the long term, which is where, if you really care about the fiscal soundness of this country, you should be looking at the long term. In the second decade, this bill would reduce the deficit by more than $2 trillion. So this bill, unlike what has happened in Washington over the last several years, is actually doing the hard work of paying for proposals over the long term. It is fiscally responsible, and it'll cut costs for families almost immediately.
Sorry for the delay. The budget gimmicks here that he says the sunsetting of some of these policies make the numbers, the paid-for part, work.
These aren't gimmicks. This is a responsible long-term investment. 85% of the provisions in this bill are put in place for the long term. And where there are places where programs are not extended permanently, a future Congress will have the choice of whether to extend those or not. The president has been very clear. He believes that anything that we do going forward, anything a future Congress might do or not do, should be fully paid for. But it is a completely new standard in Washington to say, is this bill paid for based on what a future Congress may or may not do? If you look at this bill, right, long-term investments to drive the productive capacity of our economy, fully paid for, and frankly, more than fully paid for over the long term. The same people that are concerned about profess to be concerned about our fiscal future should really be focused on the long term. This bill is going to make a lot of positive difference there.
You know, Republicans, Brian, argued in 2017 their tax cut bill would be paid for thanks to economic growth. And at the time, Democrats pointed to official analysis, which said otherwise. Well, now you have Republicans making that same argument that Democrats made back in 2017. So why is your argument now that the bill is paid for valid if it's the same argument the GOP was making?
We're not relying on the prospect of future economic growth. We're relying on official estimates that have looked at the provisions in this bill. The provisions in this bill will generate tax revenue, will reduce spending across time, and those resources will be invested in things that will lower costs for families, like lower prescription drug costs and lower child care costs and lower elder care costs. That's what we're looking at, and we are relying on the experts that have studied the provisions in this bill the most closely, the Congressional Budget Office, as well as the Treasury Department. One of the elements that is at issue is the issue of tax enforcement, making sure that the IRS has the tools to actually have Americans pay the taxes that they already owe. The estimates there are validated by every former IRS commissioner, including those that served under Republicans and Democrats, former Treasury secretaries, including Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson, who served under Republican administrations. These experts, who have decades of experience looking at how the tax system works, have looked at the estimates behind this bill and said, if anything, they're too conservative. If anything, we're likely to raise more revenue across time.
So, Brian, you expect this bill, though, to shrink as moderates in the Senate get their hands on it and have concerns about it, right?
This is a process that we've been going through here for months, working closely to and listening to members of both the House and the Senate. The milestone in the House was a big and important step in getting this bill done, and now we move to the Senate. We will work with every member of the Senate on this bill. But I think that because of that work over several months, we really do now have a good understanding of where the consensus lies. It lies in lowering costs for American families. It lies in getting more people back to work by actually addressing the barriers that are keeping people from doing so, like child care. And it lies in making some serious reforms that will restore some fairness to the tax code. We have broad agreement on those provisions, and so I expect that as we move to the Senate, we'll have a lot of momentum. We'll work, as the congressional process does, we'll work to get a bill through the Senate. We need 50 votes, and then it'll go back to the House and to the president's desk.
And we'll see the timing on that. The latest Fox News poll on the economy, President Biden has 36% approval when it comes to the economy. And you can see from May, that's a significant drop. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think the American people understand that we have made progress, but there's a lot of work to do. And I think that they understand that they're less interested in what, frankly, we are saying here on this program or saying might happen, and they're more focused on seeing concrete action and delivery in their lives. And so that is something that we now are focused on with everything that we do. We haven't talked about it, but we just signed into law an infrastructure bill that will go directly at solving some of the problems that are that we face in this economy today, like the supply chain bottlenecks at our ports and through our systems of commerce. That's a bill that people will start to see the impact of. And when they see us delivering in places that are directly relevant to their lives, then I think they will understand what we're doing here. But we understand that the onus here is on delivering, and that's why we are focused on getting these bills done and implementing them consistent with their purpose.
A couple more questions very quickly. Has the president made a decision on the nomination for Federal Reserve Chair?
Well, the president has signaled that he intends to make an announcement on that in the coming days, and so I'm going to leave the substance and timing of that one to him.
Well, the two basically comes down to the current Fed chair, Jerome Powell, or Fed Governor Lael Brainerd. Some Democratic senators have been pushing for Brainerd, citing concerns about climate change. They want a Fed that's more assertive on climate change. Does the president share that view?
Well, the president's been spending a lot of time on this issue. It's obviously an important decision for the country. There are multiple positions open at the Federal Reserve, which the president will have an opportunity to nominate qualified candidates for, and is looking at all of those issues. And again, I'll leave that final decision and announcement to the president.
Well, it could be tomorrow.
I'm going to leave that timing to him.
Okay, all right, gotcha. Last question. The president just held this virtual summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping, a long talk with the Chinese leader. Is the Biden administration going to keep the Trump-era China tariffs in place? There are fears from your critics that they will the Biden administration will roll over with promises about climate change policy shifts by the Chinese. Will the tariffs stay in place?
Well, the president has been very clear that he's going to stand up for American interests. He has a very direct relationship with President Xi, and that was on evidence in the significant conversation that they had that you just referenced. And with respect to trade, we are currently interacting with the Chinese around the so-called Phase 1 trade agreement that, because of the way that it was negotiated by the prior administration, did not adequately protect a number of American economic interests, and the Chinese have not fully lived up to the promises in that agreement. So we are engaging with our Chinese counterparts, but with a clear understanding that we're representing American interests, and we are going to take the actions that we need to protect those American interests. But that cuts across not only tariff policy, but also procurement commitments that the Chinese government has made, and the broader challenges that the Chinese face to our economy, whether it's intellectual property theft or strategic investments in areas that could affect our national security. So we're taking a broad view of that, and certainly with a clear focus that the American worker, the American consumer, the American economy is the president's priority, and he will stand up for our principles and our economy as well.
Brian Deese, thanks for the time.